In Colorado, strict protocols limit butterfly releases to a few hundred. Yet rumors surged about 500,000 butterflies unleashed onto bare land with no flowers, igniting talk of mass ecological collapse. There is no record that this disaster happened, but the science is clear. Even a fraction of that number deprived of nectar would face a catastrophic fate within days. So where did this story come from, and what does it reveal about how conservation efforts can go dangerously wrong? Permits for butterfly releases in Colorado are not handed out lightly. Federal rules, enforced through the USDA, require a documented application process even for small ceremonial events. Each shipment of butterflies must be accompanied by paperwork verifying species, origin, and intended use. In 2024, the largest documented event in the state released just over 450 painted lady butterflies at Heritage Park in Louisville. This memorial, attended by local families and hospice staff, followed every regulatory step. The organizers had the permit in hand, vendor receipts filed, and a clear record of how many butterflies were released and where. Commercial suppliers who serve Colorado clients ship butterflies in specialized containers, each designed to hold between 50 and 224 individuals. Even the largest decorator boxes used for dramatic effect at weddings or memorials rarely exceed 125. Vendors require proof of event location, recipient identification, and sometimes even temperature checks to ensure the butterflies will survive the journey and the release. Every shipment is tracked, and each permit is tied to a specific number, far below anything approaching thousands, let alone hundreds of thousands. The logistics of a mass release are not just improbable, they are practically impossible under current rules. A shipment of 500,000 butterflies would require thousands of containers, a dedicated fleet of trucks, and a mountain of paperwork. No such records exist in any public or private database. Conservation groups, state agencies, and private breeders all operate within a framework that limits risk and protects native ecosystems. The reality is that every legitimate release in Colorado is measured, documented, and small in scale. These limits are not arbitrary. They are the result of decades of experience, scientific review, and a careful balance between public engagement and ecological safety. The idea of a single event unleashing 500,000 butterflies on barren land simply does not fit the facts or the paperwork. Butterfly release protocols extend well beyond paperwork. Before any butterflies are set free, conditions on the ground must be checked and double-checked. Temperature is the first hurdle. Painted lady butterflies, like most species released in Colorado, cannot fly if the air is below 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Commercial breeders warn that anything under 70 degrees Fahrenheit means weak flight and higher risk of death. On cool mornings, butterflies need time to warm up. Standard practice calls for holding them in chilled boxes until the sun has fully risen and the air is warm. A breeder in Fort Collins puts it simply: release them cold and you're just feeding the birds. But temperature is only one part of the equation. Every reputable vendor and conservation guide insists on a habitat survey before any release. Nectar plants must be present and blooming. Without flowers, adult butterflies have no food. Permits require written verification that the site supports sufficient nectar sources for the number of butterflies planned. This step is never skipped in legitimate releases. Even small events, like a hospice memorial with 50 painted ladies, require a checklist confirming not just the species, but also the state of the habitat. No flowers, no permit. No permit, no butterflies. Yet, shortcuts do happen. Sometimes, organizers eager for spectacle overlook the basics. Habitat surveys are rushed or ignored, especially when events are scaled up or scheduled for early spring before native plants bloom. The consequences are severe. Butterflies released into empty fields or manicured lawns without flowers cannot feed. Within hours, they become lethargic. Within a day or two, most will die of starvation. The protocols are clear for a reason. Skipping a single step, like verifying nectar plants or waiting for the right temperature, can turn a hopeful gesture into a disaster. When practical steps are ignored, nature does not forgive. The absence of flowers in a release site is not a minor detail. It is the difference between life and certain death. Released into an unfamiliar world, the butterflies reacted on pure instinct. Within minutes, thousands scattered in every direction, wings beating furiously in the dry morning air. Painted ladies, like most butterflies, are driven by a single urgent need to find nectar. Their flight muscles burn through stored energy at a staggering rate, up to 50 times more than at rest. Without immediate access to flowers, every wing beat drained their reserves. By the 6-hour mark, the search became frantic. Individuals zigzagged low over the ground, landing and taking off again, probing bare soil and dry grass for any hint of sweetness. The absence of color, no blooms, no scent, triggered a subtle but relentless panic. Some butterflies attempted to bask on warm rocks, hoping to conserve what little ATP remained in their muscles. Others formed loose clusters along fence lines and dirt patches, wings trembling with exhaustion. As morning turned to afternoon, the first signs of trouble appeared. Butterflies that had flown the farthest slowed, their movements losing precision. By hour 12, lethargy set in across the release site. The relentless search pattern broke down. Many individuals ceased flying altogether, choosing instead to crawl along the ground or cling to weeds, wings closed tightly. A few attempted to sip moisture from dewdrops or puddles, but water alone could not replace the sugars their bodies craved. Energy curves for butterflies in these conditions drop sharply. With no nectar to replenish lost calories, most adults can only sustain active flight for a matter of hours. By the end of the first day, the landscape was dotted with motionless bodies, wings faded and still. The initial burst of movement gave way to a silent, spreading fatigue, a biological clock ticking down as starvation set in. No amount of instinct could overcome the reality. Without flowers, survival was measured in hours, not days. By the second morning, the ground beneath the release site had changed. Where there had been frantic motion and scattered wings, clusters of painted ladies now huddled motionless in the cool shadows. The search for nectar had ended in exhaustion. With no flowers to feed from, the butterflies' bodies burned through their last reserves. Flight became impossible. Their wings, so recently alive with color, now barely twitched in the breeze. Predators noticed the change. Birds that had circled from a distance moved in, drawn by the sudden abundance of easy prey. Sparrows and starlings picked among the clusters, snapping up weakened butterflies that could no longer escape. Even ants began to gather, carrying away pieces of what remained. The scale of loss was impossible to ignore. By hour 48, the release site resembled a silent graveyard. Carcasses lay in drifts along fence posts, pressed into the dust, caught on the stems of dry grass. The few survivors clung to any surface that offered warmth, but their movements were sluggish, their bodies spent. Metabolic exhaustion set the timeline. Adult butterflies deprived of nectar can survive only a day or two before their energy is gone. Without sugar, flight muscles fail. Even resting becomes a struggle. By hour 72, almost none remained alive. The bright wings that had filled the air now littered the ground, faded and torn. The absence of flowers had set a clock ticking from the moment of release, and nothing could stop it. The tragedy was total, visible in every corner of the barren field. Nature's requirements had not been met, and the result was a mass mortality event. It was swift, silent, and absolute. Official records for a wildlife event of this magnitude should be easy to find. Any sanctioned release of 500,000 butterflies would generate a trail of digital and physical evidence, permits, press releases, shipping manifests, and at least a handful of news stories. But a search through the Associated Press archives, the Denver Post, and the press rooms of every relevant Colorado agency turns up nothing. No mention of a mass butterfly release, no statements from wildlife officials, no photos of the event. Social media, usually quick to amplify anything visually striking, is equally silent. No Instagram posts tagged at Cheyenne Mountain State Park, no TikTok videos of clouds of butterflies, no Facebook events or community forum threads. Even local photographers, who regularly document bird migrations and wildflower blooms, have not posted a single image or comment about an event that would have filled the air with color. Permitting databases are just as empty. Colorado parks and wildlife lists every permitted wildlife release, from trout restocking to raptor rehabilitation, but there is no entry for butterflies on the scale described. USDA records, which track interstate shipments of live insects, show no consignments approaching even a fraction of 500,000 individuals. Conservation organizations and entomology societies, who monitor both wild and captive butterfly populations, have issued no alerts, statements, or follow-up reports. In a digital era where even the smallest community events leave a footprint, photos, hashtags, live streams, the absence of any trace is striking. For a release on this scale, the expectation would be hundreds of images, eyewitness accounts, and official documentation. Instead, there is a total vacuum. The missing media and permits do not just raise questions, they make the existence of such an event all but impossible. In the world of conservation, paperwork and publicity are inseparable from action. When both are missing, what remains is doubt. Scaling up from a typical Colorado butterfly release to the numbers rumored in viral stories stretches the bounds of plausibility. Even the largest legitimate events, around 400 to 450 butterflies, require careful handling and specialized containers. Each shipping box used by commercial breeders usually holds between 50 and 224 butterflies. To move 500,000 individuals, the math is simple but staggering. At best, more than 2,200 containers would be needed, each one requiring precise temperature control and gentle handling to prevent injury or death during transit. Freight weight adds another layer. With boxes averaging 1 pound each when packed, the total shipment would exceed a literal ton. Transporting such a load would call for a dedicated truck, not just a few overnight packages. Staffing would need to scale up as well. A single release of this size would require dozens of handlers to unload, acclimate, and distribute the boxes, tasks performed by small teams during even the most ambitious memorial events. No such workforce ever assembled in Colorado for a butterfly release, and no local courier or shipping company has logged a delivery of this magnitude. Paperwork would leave a trail. Butterfly shipments are tracked by invoices, courier logs, and permit numbers. Yet not a single record exists for a bulk order anywhere near this scale. Breeders, both in state and out, operate under strict USDA oversight, and every shipment is linked to a recipient and event. A release of 500,000 butterflies would generate a mountain of documentation, permits, shipping manifests, staff rosters, and delivery receipts. Conservation groups, state agencies, and shipping vendors all confirm there is no evidence, digital or physical, for an operation of this size. The numbers alone make the story collapse. The logistics required would rival those of a small animal rescue or a commercial livestock delivery, not a ceremonial or conservation event. The absence of containers, trucks, invoices, and staff rosters is not a minor oversight. It is proof that the event, as described, never happened. The rumor fails the most basic test of scale and feasibility, closing the door on claims that hundreds of thousands of butterflies ever arrived in Colorado's barren fields. Disease moves quietly through a butterfly population, but its impact is anything but subtle. In recent decades, scientists have tracked an alarming trend. Wild monarch butterfly numbers have fallen by as much as 90% across North America. While habitat loss and pesticides are well-known threats, disease, especially the protozoan parasite Ophryocistis electrocera, known as OE, poses a silent, deadly risk. OE spreads most efficiently when butterflies are crowded together or released in large numbers, as spores cling to their bodies and contaminate every surface they touch. Dr. Sonia Altizer, a leading monarch researcher at the University of Georgia, warns that even monarchs that survive to adulthood can still carry and spread infections, placing already reduced populations of wild monarchs at greater risk. The danger is not just to the released butterflies, but to every wild butterfly nearby. When mass releases happen without proper health screening or consideration of local ecology, the stage is set for outbreaks that ripple through entire regions. What begins as an act of celebration or conservation can quickly become a vector for collapse. The hard lesson, confirmed by years of research, is that population crashes are not just possible, they are inevitable when basic biological realities are ignored. Regulations for butterfly releases in the United States are strict about paperwork and species, but they stop short of requiring disease testing by law. Commercial breeders can ship painted lady or monarch butterflies across state lines without mandatory screening for parasites like OE. This regulatory gap leaves wild populations exposed to risks that could be avoided with stronger oversight. Conservation scientists have long argued that the best way to support butterflies is not through mass releases, but by restoring native habitat. Planting milkweed, coneflowers, and asters creates corridors of food and shelter that sustain wild populations year after year. In test plots across Colorado, even small patches of native flowers have led to measurable increases in butterfly numbers and diversity. These successes stand in sharp contrast to the high mortality seen when butterflies are released into barren land. Habitat-first approaches are slow, but they work, providing the nectar, shelter, and breeding sites that butterflies need to survive. Without these basics, even the most well-intentioned releases end in loss. Today, viral claims can outpace fact and shape public perception faster than science can respond. While no such butterfly disaster occurred, real conservation mistakes happen when critical checks are ignored. As misinformation spreads more quickly than ever, our vigilance matters. The line between myth and reality is thin, and the consequences of confusing them still unfold across every ecosystem. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.